everyone, and welcome to another episode with Reinforce the Horse.
Reinforce the Horse.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you, Alyssa?
Good. It's a beautiful day today. And so, let's get right into this conversation. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, it's been a little bit since our last session, and we had been going pretty strong, kicking out an episode every week, and then we got sick, and as a result, kind of took some time off, and then I personally have been really busy just doing all the things, business to run,
House to build, horse
farm
to feed.
to hang out with, horses to hang out with. So I got sick a few weeks ago, and it turned out to be just like a stomach flu. But it kind of creeped me out because the symptoms, and it was just kind of like flu-like symptoms, were like really similar to some of the symptoms that I've had as a result of the leukemia that I have. And I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about cancer generally, maybe answer some of your questions, maybe talk about some of the stuff that I think people normally have questions about, and then also really kind of key in on how I believe that the horses are helping me heal physically and emotionally throughout the cancer fighting journey that I'm on, or that we're on. So that's kind of the idea that I had.
I mean, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I know, you were pretty worried about the sickness scare pretty much until I got it a week after, right?
Yeah, and
like, uh-oh.
So, living with any type of cancer or any type of like chronic illness, it could kind of make you a little hypochondriac at times, like where you're just kind of like, oh, what's that in my body? Oh, that must be this, or, and like I said, the symptoms were so similar, and I hadn't had a stomach flu for a really long time. And this one just kind of, it didn't come on quick for me. It was like 3 weeks worth of feeling icky. And then I think, or more icky than normal. And then, but I think that was coincidental. I was just kind of not feeling that great. And then I got this stomach flu, and then it just like within 48 hours, it was like here, really rapid, and then gone. And then I was just like, what's going on? And then I was actually relieved when you got sick, and then, a couple like Facebook groups of people with the same condition, and they've mentioned that, they find some relief when their other family members get sick too, because it's like, oh, it's not, it's not the cancer doing its thing more rapidly or something like that. So,
yeah. Well, so in what ways do you feel like, and I feel like there's probably quite a few, but in what ways do you feel like having the cancer has changed your view on having, or your view on chronic illnesses or cancer itself?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I used to ask myself, like, how do people know that they have cancer? It's like, or any chronic illness. And I mean, the short answer is it makes sense. It's just like you wind up going to a doctor for a checkup, even just like normal checkup, and it's on the blood test or something like that. But I didn't have any empathy for people in chronic health conditions. You know, it was just like one of those things like, oh, well, that's what other people are dealing with. And, it's, you know, I'm healthy and strong, and I don't think that's really going to happen to me for a long time, you know, and being diagnosed with a form of cancer that the median age for it is somewhere around like 75 years old. And I was 35 at diagnosis.
Wow.
It kind of puts you into a tailspin of like, you know, what the, but I think it's caused me to soften a lot in my being and my presence, at least I feel like. And it's also, so there's a certain amount of like humility about it and softness. And then also it's really helped develop like my focus on the present. And so that has really paralleled with my horsemanship journey, because as you're well aware, they require us to be present.
Oh, yes.
More than I think any other creature, at least from my perspective, does. So I even think about, you know, when you and Jake were younger, and even now, but you know, like if I wasn't present with you guys for whatever reason, like you would just kind of find something else to do. Mm-hmm. And they do the same, but it's just, you know, if you want to hang out with a horse and really hang out with them, not just like, you know, mount and go ride and like, which I don't think you should mount and go ride if you're not present anyway. I think most people would agree with that. But if you want to really have a relationship with the horse, maybe if you want to have a relationship with anything or anyone, you got to be present. But
Yeah.
I just feel it really strongly with the horses, and they really seem to appreciate and reciprocate it.
Yeah, they definitely, and horses as big as they are, sometimes I question whether they know and understand their size and their weight.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I like it's evident and obvious that they know that they're big and strong, especially when we're not present with them. I mean, I've seen it in both Willow and Cody. More so Willow. She's a lot more, I feel like she's a lot more in tune on that, on the presence and I wouldn't even call it like the center of attention. She just like, she enjoys the presence. And as soon as you leave the present, she has had a tendency of like hitting me with her nose, and not hard to hurt me, but hey, like get back in it. Like you're not here with me. Be here with me. She'll just like kind of like quickly throw her nose into my chest. Be like, okay, that wasn't
just
very
like
nice.
a tap.
Yeah.
You know?
Or she'll
she
start,
boops her own snoot.
Yeah. Or she'll start offering other behaviors like the Spanish walk, or she'll start side passing into me, or she'll just randomly smile off cue. And it's like, okay, well, when she's doing that and I have no treats, she knows it's not like an active training session. And she offers those behaviors. I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to kind of get back in it.
Yeah.
Cody, on the other hand, he seems like he's a lot more in tune with your feelings. As long as you're letting him in and you're incorporating him into your feelings. He doesn't seem like he requires as much presence to be with him as Willow does. Which is interesting because
I would agree with that. Yeah. Different personalities.
Yeah. And I mean, he's such a sweet horse, and he's very much of an emotional sponge. He is the kind of horse that, I mean, you could be having a bad day and go in and just stand next to him and you'll automatically feel better, and he'll submit to it. I mean, put his head low, cock his back foot. He'll do the like 1,000 times over, like he's helping you process it. Yeah.
Well, I've had so many moments, and I've talked about it in other sessions here on the podcast. But I've had so many, especially in the past, I'd say like year, so many times where, with both the horses, in fact, just feeling like super connected from like an energy, spiritual, emotional perspective. And as you know, it's caused me to really kind of think about the healing process. And I've become really intrigued by the possibility of literally healing on a physical or medical level. And I feel like it's certainly possible to do. And I feel like I am healing most days. Some days I feel like that's a goofy thought and a little too woo-woo, but it just kind of depends on the day. But I do know without a doubt that the energy exchange between horse and human, for those who are interested and open to it, both horse and human, it's a really powerful process. And so one of my mantras with Cody especially has been, you're healing, I'm healing, we're healing. And it's just kind of a thought in a way, a mantra, like, you know, it's just something that allows me to express that process verbally, and he receives it. And so it might be coincidental, it might not, I don't know, but you know how he was having a lot of like allergy issues and coughing, and he had a couple nosebleeds, which we all, you know, we discussed all this with the veterinarian, and you know, it was chalked up to just being allergies, which I don't disagree with at all. But I mean, maybe I'm kind of superimposing the healing process on him. I don't know. I'm human. So like a lot of this is unexplainable really, but I've only heard him cough like a couple times, like in the past, like 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's different than like prior to that. Like I would take him out just at a walk and he would start coughing.
Yeah.
Like heavy cough, like in horses cough every once in a while, but you know, not to that extent.
It was very, like it was like every single time he started getting his heart pumping even just a little bit, he would cough.
And once he warmed up, it was fine.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that he had like some, you know, huge issue or chronic illness or whatever. And I'm fine with it being just allergies, but it was still something that chronically affected him.
Yeah.
You know, like he was clearly uncomfortable, and he doesn't have that now. And I don't know, in a cool sort of way that gives me hope.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we could line up like every person listening to this right now, and everybody has their opinions, but at the end of the day, like that mantra that I just shared and that thought process is all just, in my mind, about hope.
Yeah.
So.
And believing. I mean,
yeah.
I watched this short on YouTube a while back, and it was one of Bob Proctor's shorts, and he was explaining the fact that, I mean, like the law of attraction, being able to attract good things or things into your life, you have to not only hope and want them that bad, you have to believe that they're there. And that's the message that I got from it. It's not, you know, quoted or anything.
Right.
But it was like, it really spoke to me. And so I think that, you know, when you're using that mantra or saying that mantra with Cody, it gives your subconscious mind some sort of belief, and
right.
And you see that through him.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like he you have helped him heal from, I mean, regardless of if we're talking trauma or medical, maybe allergies or whatever, I feel like you've helped him heal, I mean, in a lot of ways, the same way he's helping you heal.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, and you and I have talked a lot about just kind of the parallel journey that our respective horses have had perhaps in their life versus ours. And there's something really magical about that.
Yeah.
And unexplainable. I do think though, if we cut the woo-woo out of it, it can be as simple as just being open and honest with another living sentient being.
Yeah.
You know, and when we express that vulnerability, things happen and change occurs. So it's that vulnerability is a catalyst for positive change in my mind. And so whether we're dealing with a chronic illness or an acute illness, or mental health or emotional health, you know, no matter what the struggle is, being able to open up and be vulnerable about that, ultimately helps to pave the way for healing.
Yeah.
And the healing process is a journey. It definitely is, because, you know, and going back to your question about how have I changed and kind of thinking about chronic illness, it's like, well, that's part of the journey. It's, for whatever reason, it's allowed me to empathize and be open. I mean, like, I would have never thought, like, before all of this, like, sit down and record it and share it with the world, you know? But hopefully in that vulnerability, to some degree, you know, somebody out there can say, oh, well, I'm dealing with this, and it's just good to hear that somebody else is dealing with something too.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, you've been talking a lot about your CLL group on Facebook lately, which is pretty amazing. You talk pretty highly of it. And from how I understand, is it just like CLL patients?
Yeah.
In the group?
So, and you know, for those, so the type of leukemia that I have is called chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or CLL for short. And as I was feeling gross, you know, those weeks leading up to the stomach flu, I was like, well, maybe there's a group on Facebook or something. So I connected, and so that's just been recent, like being able to connect with, and there's like a few groups that I connected in, and yeah, so it's just cool to, you know, connect with other people who are going through similar circumstances, and you know, that's part of the healing journey as well.
Yeah, and it's people, I mean, it seems like people that are able to, you know, help, maybe they've had it longer.
Yeah.
Or just, you know, newer people that you're able to sit down and be like, hey, I went through that. Here's what helped me.
Yeah, because just the word cancer, no matter like what it is just, it's one of those like heavy hitter words.
Yeah.
No matter, you know, and some would say like CLL, and this is tossed around a lot, like it's the quote good cancer. Like, if you're going to get cancer, you might as well get that one. But then that's kind of a misnomer, because there's other conditions that can arrive as a result of that. And like, they're actually quite fatal, quite rapidly. And so you can get into these like thought processes where you're just like, oh, well, and I tend to be more of an anxious person than relaxed. I mean, that's just kind of like my nature, which I've really worked on over the years. But when it comes to medical stuff, I've always had a hard time with it. It's always something that's made me anxious and nervous. And so having something as heavy hitting as cancer come into your life is just like, wow, all right, well, need to figure out how to deal with that appropriately.
It's like life saying you better get comfortable being around a doctor's office.
Right. Well, and that's another thing too. I'm not one to like, and I'm still not like uber excited about doctor visits and stuff like that. So, you know, but there's a level of like, just, you know, realizing that there's some science involved and of course some medical expertise that can help. And so all of these things kind of culminate and weave together to help heal. Yeah. And so I'm not implying that, you know, a horse alone can heal me, but at the same time, I'm implying that a horse alone can heal me, because it's all part of the process of creating an environment. Pretty much like my goal is that I feel like I'm healing and I'm on that track 24/7, regardless of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not there, but that's my goal. And you know, like some days are like really, really easy and free flowing. And then other days for me are just like really difficult. And a lot of that's just emotional. It doesn't really have much to do with the medical aspect, but sometimes it does. Sometimes I just feel horrible for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, I mean, not that you feel terrible all the time, but it's pretty amazing how, and I mean, I don't know, the human brain has always been fascinating to me. It's one of those that I don't think anybody really understands 100%, but, it's so fascinating and amazing how we can not predict the future, but attract things into our life, or, you know, say certain things, do certain things, and I mean, which otherwise, you know, will, you know, throw a curve in a good way at our bodies, or at the way we see something, or at, you know, past trauma or cancer, healing maybe. And it's just, I don't know, I've always got a kick out of the human brain and how we can convince it things, even if things aren't necessarily true in that moment.
Right. And we kind of just throw it out there to the cosmos. Yeah. And then, there's that idea that, you know, you wish, I guess, for something in life and then just kind of like let it be and don't have like a focused expectation of what's going to happen. And like, I related a lot like to the house building process, like the times in this. So we are building a house from the ground up, and, we're just about at the point of finishing the roof right now. And that process, like looking back on the past couple of years when I've been like, have like super high expectations of like, need to get this done and this by this date. And, I wasn't as effective as like more recently. I've been more free flowing, and I'm not saying like lazy by any stretch, or like, I mean, there's still like goals that I have, like, you know, I'd like to be done with this particular part just for organization purposes of time and whatnot. But, when I just am more present and free flowing with it and just work like one step in front of the other, it seems like I'm much more efficient and I get much more accomplished than if I'm, you know, projecting out into the future. One of my big problems I've had in life, is this kind of statement in my mind of, I can't wait until ... you know? And that's, you know, I've heard that, you know, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. And if you're at peace, you're in the present. Something like that. and that's a quote from somewhere. So that's not my own doing, but most certainly, the more I think, or the more I act in the present moment, the more at peace I am.
Yeah.
And that reduces anxiety. And we can't have anxiety or depression, for that matter, on a great scale. Of course, we're all going to experience that, to some degree, a time or two in life here and there. But you can't have chronic anxiety and depression and heal.
Yeah.
I think those are components that will actually detract from the healing process. So the horses, again, just they help ground me.
Oh, yeah.
In a way of thinking, in a process. And as you and I have talked about, just being in their presence. And I know we've talked a bit about like the Heart Myth Institute of, that research they did on the electromagnetic field of the heart of humans and horses.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff just fascinates me, because anybody who has been around horses for even a short period of time, I think the vast majority of people would agree that just being in a horse's presence, there's a certain calm feeling about it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's not always the case, but I would say if it's not the case, either the horse or the human are bringing some sort of past trauma into that equation and not fully clearing that out first.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess I relate that statement to like when Willow first came home. I mean, again, very baseline gentled. I mean, she'd had human hands on her. She had a halter on, baseline gentled. But she was scared. I mean, she was scared so many times. Of so many things. At first, it was the hay net that I had her hay in. It was the blue water bucket, or the blue water trough we had in her pen. It was the shed, we have like run-in sheds for them in their pens as like shade and rain, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here, please. Like rain shelter. Thank you. Rain shelter. And I mean, going in and around those three things, which, I mean, a typical horse is pretty comfortable with those things. She was afraid of them. I mean, me sitting
like super afraid.
Yeah. I mean, she'd look at him and I mean, the wind would, push the hay bag a little bit. You could
see that twitching and flinching.
She'd do that and then she'd dart the opposite direction.
And to compare that to like current, it's just like, I mean, we could go off on a tangent about how awesome Willow is. Being there and present and listening to her. I mean, even on the times that she was most scared, there was peace that I found being around her. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that most likely came from the confidence I had with being around her. I've never been afraid of horses, and I still haven't decided or figured out whether that comes naturally or that's a learned behavior or a mix of both. But I mean, for me to be calm and confident, I guess handling her, if you will, definitely helped her with the training. And, now she's comfortable with it. And I think she finds a lot of peace in being in my presence, which is amazing, because I never thought that sort of feeling was possible. But here, I found it. And I mean, I see it with you and Cody, and even, you and Willow. I mean, when you're around them, you seem like your whole world just kind of freezes for a moment. Yeah.
Like your cancer isn't a problem.
Right. And
it's not trying to kill you anymore.
Right. That's the art of being in the present moment.
Yeah. And but I see, like, it's amazing to be able to see that.
That's cool.
Because regardless, I mean, you have it, maybe you're healing from it, but as of right now, as far as you know, you have it. It's
Right.
always in your body. It
Right.
doesn't leave when you're with the horses, you know, but it seems like for a
But
minute,
it doesn't
you're
have
not,
to be an issue.
yeah, you're not worried about it.
Yeah.
You're not worried about how many more years you have to live or
Well-
when the next time you're going to feel sick is. You're just
Well,
there.
again, that worry or anxiety around that is projection of the future, which may or may not come to fruition as we see it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the only true thing that exists is
present
right
moment.
now, the present moment. Everything else is either a projection into the future or a memory of the past. So, yeah, I mean, never in my life before all of this, you know, and this is just a mere like few years ago, even maybe 4 years, 5 years ago, I never really thought I would be in this place of beauty with other animals and nature. However, I would say at least a good decade or so ago, I remember softly planting the seeds in that direction from not even really thinking of like the law of attraction or anything. It was just like thoughts would come up and I would just send them out there. Like, it'd be really cool to live, you know, more in more open space and more connected with nature. Maybe a farm sounds good or something like that. I had no idea what that even meant. It just sounded good at the time. And so I put that out there, and that's the cool thing about attraction is that you put things out there, and so long as you don't have the, you know, I need this or it has to happen now or when's it going to happen? If you put it out there with, you know, the right intentions and you just leave it and circle back around to it, and maybe things like healing. So like the mantra, you know, that's not, you know, a daily practice necessarily. It could be, but it's kind of like, it's something that's there when I feel it's most needed. So again, it helps ground me in that direction of like, okay, well, my blood's not healthy at the moment, but maybe in the future it will be. And I'm open to that, you know, being real, even if it's in the way of like medical advances and, you know, cause, you know, there's clearly that stuff's, important. So yeah, I love just the, I don't know, learning and being on the journey is just kind of an amazing thing. So there's, of course, cancer is not a fun thing, and it's not, it's really hard to be diagnosed with it, especially at a rather young age. But at the same time, what it's done for me as an individual and actually growing in a lot of ways, emotionally, mentally, you know, spiritually, all of those things, you know, perhaps I wouldn't have gotten any of that any other way.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about, you know, and something I haven't ever asked you, but like, you know, I'm your dad. How do you feel about me having cancer?
It's weird. I mean, at first, when I was told this, I think now it was about a year ago or so, something around there, that he sat down with my brother and I and, or me and my brother, and told us that he had cancer. You know, like at first I kind of jumped to like, how long do you have to live? Like I thought that it was, you know, something that it was newly diagnosed. I thought that it was a tumor. I wasn't like, I mean, I didn't know a whole ton about it initially. And I don't know a ton about it now, but I guess I'm more comfortable with it now. I mean, knowing that it's slow growing, it's slow moving, I kind of gives me some peace of mind. And I joke around a lot, and I'm just like, you can't die until you're like 120. It'll be 121 day, and 150 the next. But regardless of how much peace of mind I have, it's still scary. And I think it's scary for everyone involved. It's it's that thought that you most likely, I mean, given the statistics and everything, will die before you're, I guess, supposed to die, before an average person would.
Right.
And that's kind of scary.
And that's really, just based on my age of diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, like, again, I think the median age is like age 75, if I'm not wrong on that. And so, a lot of people diagnosed at that age, they never enter any sort of treatment because they effectively will die of old age before the cancer will take their life.
Yeah.
But at younger diagnosis, it plays out not necessarily quicker, but it's just like, it plays out, and, you're younger to begin with. So,
yeah. But I mean, in a lot of ways, like, I am really thankful that you have a cancer that's like not trying to kill you tomorrow. You know? Like that is nice.
Well, I think it's trying to kill me. Well,
I don't think it's trying to kill you at all. It's just trying to stay alive.
Right. It just wants a host. And that's one of the funny things. I mean, Alyssa and I are like looking at each other and laughing because, we joke around about this a lot. And I think being a bit jovial about it is part of the healing process as well. I mean, let's face it, and you and I have talked about it a lot where, this may not even be the way I die. Like, I could get in a car accident, a horse accident, fall off the roof or while I'm building it or something like that.
They're such fragile beings.
There's so much that can come up. So just wrapping into like, oh, cancer is going to kill me, I think is the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
But then it reminds me of like the idea that I had, like, so in visualization, and I'm kind of goofy, but I kind of had this idea for a children's book, talking about, mainly the focus is on mindfulness, and so this children's book, I wanted to call it Hasta la Vista Leukemia. And, basically, I had this, and I don't know, I think, if I was a good illustrator, I think it would come out right. But, a guy, like an astronaut and his space horse, in space, and they've got to use mindfulness techniques to, basically ask and coerce, if you will, the leukemia cells into this airlock that they would then press a button and it would go from the airlock into this big sombrero looking spaceship and go out into the cosmos. And so I thought that would be a fun way to kind of introduce cancer and healing and also mindfulness techniques to children.
You've also talked about and I love the idea. I know we've talked about it in the past. We've definitely laughed.
I need to write it.
Yeah. But you've also talked about coexistence with it. And as of right now, you are coexisting with it.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe not in a way that you'd like to be coexisting with it. I mean, if you can't visualize it going away, is it possible that you could, and maybe get a few other people on your side, and, help you out, but is it possible that you could talk to this cellular level being and convince it to kind of tone it down a little bit?
Right.
And live and, survive. Like, hey, I'm not trying to kill you in there, but quit trying to make me sick.
Yeah, so this is interesting, and for those of you listening, I know there's probably a good number that would like roll their eyes at that, but there's also a good number of people that are like, that's interesting. So it's a living thing at the cellular level, and I mean, so I remember in a podcast that I had hosted like years ago, there was a guest on my show. Her name's Trisha Devney, and she plays the crystal harmonic bowls, and that was actually my first segue into mindfulness and meditation. And I remember she gave me like a 2-minute sample clip, and it basically amounts to a 2-minute meditation. And by the end of that 2 minutes, like I felt like my brain got an upgrade.
Huh.
That's how I described it. And so where I'm getting at with that is, so these crystal bowls, they create this like harmonic sound, and it's really beautiful, really calming. And one of her positions was that, and in fact, she had told me she had healed from a chronic illness. I can't remember what it was. I want to say hepatitis, but, and she attributed that healing to the sound resonance.
Huh.
And that's how she got into that modality of music. And I find that fascinating because at the core of us, we're like, what is it, 86% water? And sound resonates through water very effectively, for lack of better terms. And so the idea is that different sounds, even like I've heard like the names that were named, they have, of course, different frequency of sound, and that actually can play into how our personalities developed. Which is interesting because my name Jason actually means healer, and I don't know exactly what origin necessarily. Hebrew,
I think.
Okay, but with those. I don't know. It's very woo-woo, and who really knows? But again, it just gives a level of possibility. I don't know where I was going with that, but sound resonance, and because you had mentioned maybe coexisting with the cancer. Like in my mind, it's like, okay, why can't you just be there, and like if there's some way to communicate the idea that something that could take over your life, like cancer, which you just said a moment ago that it's really just wanting to survive itself. It would be really cool if like there was some way to communicate, be it through mindfulness techniques or whatever, that, hey, cancer cells, you're getting a little out of hand and making me feel pretty horrible. If you keep this up, we're both going to die. Yeah. But if you kind of scale back a little bit, if you can, then we can both live.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty, I mean, I don't know, I laugh about it. I've never heard of a story that's happened. I'm sure, I mean, I'm sure the idea has been brought up elsewhere, and I'm sure there's people that have, done work to do something similar to that. I mean, I've heard some pretty incredible stories of people healing from other chronic illnesses. So, I mean, I definitely feel like it's possible. And I feel like with the help of, the horses, a different species, a very calming different species, I feel like, I mean, that would be, I feel like it'd be possible. And, I mean, call in some experts and,
Well, and I mean, at the core of things, like, what is healing? I mean, even all different religions and belief systems have some component of healing process. Like, what pops into mind immediately is like the Christian aspect of like, quote, laying hands on people. And so, you know, there's a belief that, and from like a Christian biblical perspective, it's like, healing took place all throughout biblical times. And, that's really interesting. So do we still have that ability? If those stories were true,
yeah.
do we still have that ability? I think we do. I think collectively humanity's kind of lost touch with a lot of the spiritual and kind of core components in that way. A lot of in a lot of ways, I think, like modern and not necessarily like in our lifetime, but even, not long ago. I mean, Christianity's one is like actually kind of a young religion, a young, but there are, indigenous tribes that have been, practicing, whether it be like types of shamanism or spiritual healing or these like healing journeys that they might bring in and use different psychedelics to more or less open a gateway to the subconscious and to that core level of being to help instigate healing, or you know what I mean? Yeah. So, and in that way, I think like when it comes to the horses, I think in a lot of ways they are kind of an opening or a doorway, if you will, to that process. And I think people get it in different ways, like be it, maybe it's a different animal, like a dog or a cat or something. Even modern medicine, Western medicine doctors will agree that, having animals in your life or pets in your life really help people at minimum just to cope with chronic illness.
Yeah. There's something amazing about having like a different species there. I mean, we have similar, like, I mean, we're all mammals, I suppose, unless you have like fish or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I've always just gotten like a huge, I guess it's a dopamine response being around all animals.
Yeah.
And as I get older, the more, I find the ones that I'm more drawn to. But I mean, that's not to say that any one particular animal, in my case, the horses, are more special than, say, a snake or a dog.
Right.
But
well, you've always had that. Like,
yeah,
let's be real, Alyssa. You had a pet butterfly.
I did, and hamster, and cats, and dogs.
Butterfly.
A butterfly.
For its entire life cycle.
Yeah.
From cocoon to...
No, from a caterpillar until a butterfly.
Yeah. Yeah, a caterpillar. So, yeah, you're right. To its death. And we had to Google, like, what's the life cycle of a... Because wasn't it like a butterfly lives, like, once a butterfly, like, 2.5 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the butterfly lived like 3.5 weeks. The butterfly
yours
itself,
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it lived longer than its typical life expectancy. that thing used to perch on your finger and like,
And the
yeah.
butter, like the reasoning for having this is like the caterpillars you get in the mail. I'm going on a tangent right now. But so you get like caterpillars in the mail and you order all this, like the caterpillar or the butterfly habitat. And when they cocoon, you take the lid and like pin it onto the side of the butterfly enclosure. It's
Yeah.
like this like mesh, like collapsible little terrarium looking thing. And the butterflies, you watch them hatch. It's a really cool, homeschooling or simply just, summer, project for kids to see. Anyway, so we had five caterpillars that that we watched grow. We took care of them, and four of them came out perfectly fine. Even the one that our cat knocked down, she got in the bedroom and knocked down a cocoon, and one butterfly came out deformed. Like the wing was, I think the back side of the wing was like over the front side of the wing.
Yeah, it was like Finding Nemo and Nemo's fin.
And then it had a hole poking through the opposite side of the wing. Like there was just like a little.
So it couldn't fly.
Yeah, it couldn't fly at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it could like glide. I mean, I'd like take it and like kind of like drop my hand fast, and it would just like glide to the ground. It seemed to enjoy that, to my knowledge, and it would just walk around. But I could not see myself. I let the rest of the four go. I could not see myself letting this one go, and I had a fear that if I let it go, it was going to be walking across the road one day, because it couldn't get through another way. It would get run over by a car. And so I kept it, and I cried over having to let its brothers and sisters go. But this butterfly, I mean, it had breakfast with an orange or an apple or, every morning, and then like its tongue would come out, and it seriously seemed like it was enjoying life.
Right.
And we were sitting. I mean, I'd come down and watch TV, take Flutter with us, and I remember like we get like little sweat on our hands, and the butterfly would sit, and it was mostly my dad. Like it really liked my dad's hands, and its tongue would come out, and you just like see it just drinking off of his hand.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was just chilling. Like, it didn't seem like it was afraid. It was just like, man, this is great.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think all living things, we're all intricately connected, whether it's a cancer that's
it's alive.
And I'm not trying to be like, oh, cancer, how cute. but it's still alive, and it's just trying to thrive. And I don't know, so much about all of this has really challenged me and caused me to change my beliefs about a lot of things. And just being here on our family farm, my process of thinking and such, even about the animals alone, has changed dramatically since we first begun.
Yeah.
Because I was much more of like kind of like the farmer it up sort of mentality beginning with, but now I'm much more about like, man, it's sad. Like, but that sadness doesn't have to drive us. Like just the other day, we lost one of our goats, a male goat that we've had for, since really almost the beginning, a few years ago. And we think he might have gotten bit by a rattlesnake, because there's really no other explanation for how he died. And it's just like, well, life and death is very apparent on the farm, like almost on the daily. And I've just become really aware as to how connected we are. And so we're just all like intricately connected, and I've become really aware of that through cancer diagnosis and living with it, and also coincidentally just having farm animals and observing that process, be it, processing a chicken for food for our family, or bringing on, new baby goats and whatever it may be.
And it's been really amazing to learn to respect it. And
Right.
that's one thing. I mean, I have always respected the animal kingdom, I feel like, but
You have. Yes.
I mean, I see it in my younger sister. She has not always had that like extreme amount of respect for the animals. And I mean, she really just wants to play with them as a
Right.
young girl would.
Right.
Though, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we've all learned collectively as a family, what respect to the animals really means.
Right.
Especially, given the chickens and whatnot. I mean, we've learned where our food comes from,
Right.
which, I mean, come to think of it, the majority of, when we used to go to like the store, Fry's or Walmart to pick up a chicken, like I never thought about where it came from,
I
what kind
never
of
went
life
to
it had.
Walmart to get a chicken.
Yeah, but Fry's or, what's the other one? Costco, whatever. A store.
Right.
A store.
I'm just messing
And
with
I know. But I mean, yeah, I mean, learn that most of the chickens that are at Fry's, Walmart, or Costco they don't live a good life.
you. Right. And it's really cool to see that firsthand. It's actually, and I've talked about that with you, a number of times about how like I don't get super excited about eating meat anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I still do, but I don't eat as much of it as I used to. And I really think heavily, like right now we're still buying meat from the store and stuff like that. But working toward being as self-sustainable as possible. And it puts it into perspective, and, even just having horses too is like before like having horses and actually like being around them consistently and on the daily, I just thought they were big dumb animals and it's sad for me to say that out loud, but I didn't really acknowledge like an animal's intelligence. And now I do.
Yeah.
And I honor it, and I'm thankful for the ability and to be around them.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And
yeah.
they do teach us a lot about respect. And I mean, I guess going back to Mocha, like and in a lot of ways, I mean, it's only been a little over a year since we've lost her, due to the traumatic freak accident. Though, and I feel like I've struggled a good amount with how I was treating her. Not like I was purposefully, abusing her, but I feel like she could have been treated better. And I mean, knowing what I know now about training methods and the connection that I have with both Willow and Cody now, I mean, I definitely feel like I could have respected Mocha a lot better.
Yeah.
However, I feel like that's one reason Willow came into my life as soon as she did, because she's really helped me cope and deal with that feeling of, sadness and worry and stress over how I treated Mocha. And
Yep.
I mean, I feel like we respected Mocha as best as we could while we had her. In fact, I mean, again, really thankful that my dad was the one to, put her in her final resting spot.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I have a lot more respect for you now from that moment than I think I ever did in my life. Because you took her as gentle as you could. And it really, I mean, it was amazing. And Mocha was about 1,000 pounds and a little over, I think. And it wasn't difficult, but the way that you treated her even after she died was amazing to me. And I'm really thankful that you put in that extra time to respect her even after she was gone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess still on the topic of respect, do you think that it is possible to respect the cancer in your blood for what it is?
Huh. That's a really like profound thought. And there's this sort of like splintering thought and feeling in my mind of like, well, it's war, man, let's fight. And then there's also like this level of like acknowledging the fact that it's alive to, at least at a basic life level. And that's a stretch to say I respect it, because like I'm not about to like imply that everything needs to like be alive continually and like there's no point of death. Like death is a function of life.
Yeah.
In order to live, there has to be death. And I don't know why it's like that, be it the creator designed it that way, or for those that don't believe in the creation process, it just happened that way. So, I mean, for whatever reason, it waged war. It's kind of like a mouse or a pest, like God forbid, like a cockroach or something like that coming into like the living environment. Yeah. They're gonna die.
Oh yeah.
I'm not the type that's like I'm going to, I'm a little bit more, or a lot more thoughtful about it. And in a recent example, we were in the house, and our house is like not finished, so it's open still. And there was like this, we call them hoverflies, but it kind of looks like a cross between a bee and a fly, like a housefly and a honeybee. And so we were like, what is this? And like Selena wound up being able to get a picture of it. And like, so Google Lens, I think, called it like a bee fly or a fly bee. and they're actually like, they, if I understand it right, they eat other insects, and they're really good pollinators. Huh. And so I was just about ready to smash it. And I was like, it's not doing anything to me. And like, it's not like taking over my environment or anything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just having that pause.
Yeah.
Before I'm just like, oh, this is uncomfortable, or this doesn't belong here. At least questioning that. Now, I know a lot of people in our area will, like, if they see a rattlesnake, they'll catch it and try to get it back out into nature. I don't have a problem with that. But my thought on like even rattlesnakes coming through the property, and this is kind of, like I said, I think our buck died from a rattlesnake bite. I mean, whether that rattlesnake decided to or wanted to kill an animal, and assuming that that's what happened, an animal's dead. So I'm not going to go the extra mile to rehome a rattlesnake. That rattlesnake is, it's almost like kill or be killed. Yeah. And so to answer your question kind of more directly on the cancer, best case scenarios, it's eradicated from my body.
Yeah.
Kind of at all costs. And in other forms of this cancer and other forms, I mean, whether it's targeted treatments or chemotherapy or whatever it might be, those treatments are there to literally kill those bad cells, and they usually have some collateral damage associated with it, meaning they take out some of the good stuff as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's a function of life all around. So I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I'm just like, yeah, everything could live, because I don't think that's realistic in our life. But I do think that there's an opportunity to show empathy, respect, and love in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the fact that it doesn't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe the cancer is trying to kill you, but for what reason? Because if you die, it's going to die too.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, until, I guess, from what I hear, a lot of cancer patients are, they're fighting it. But it's not a good thing to have,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, and I mean, I don't have cancer. I don't know what it's like at all. But I'm curious if instead of, oh, cancer, you're terrible, get out of my system, I don't need you here, you make me feel terrible, maybe find one thing to thank it for while it's there.
That's profound because, and I can reflect on that, like what, and I talked about this earlier, is just the being more present and empathetic. Those are two very, very strong, or very much stronger, things that I have in my life that I didn't before being diagnosed with cancer. Like before the diagnosis, I was arguably hardly ever present, with the exception of like the meditation practices that I was doing, a year or two before the diagnosis. But that was just, and it was in those times, my being present was just for the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes that I was sitting in meditation. And then I would get up from meditation and not be present anymore the whole rest of the day. But now, cancer being a catalyst to some degree for it, I feel like I'm much more present throughout the day. Not all the time, but much more.
So in some ways it has changed you for the better.
Oh yeah. It's changed me for the better in a lot of ways.
That's amazing. And I'm not, I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, like I'm not suggesting that, keeping it around when it doesn't need to be around, but maybe treating it like a rooster that you cull. I mean, yeah, the rooster's gonna die. It's gonna go in the crock pot and it's gonna be sustenance for me, eventually, but it doesn't have to have a terrible life. It could, it could live in, up until that last moment where, that chicken being, maybe we just call that chicken the cancer for a moment, and, the treatment flooding through your system, eventually it's gonna be gone. And maybe you don't respect the cancer, and I feel like that's okay too, but I think regardless of if you like it or not, given you're the cancer patient here, it's there. And it's not going away right now. It's not going away tomorrow. It may not even go away next month or next year.
Yeah,
so
and
it's there.
I like that thought process, because what I just heard you say is like, in comparing it to the rooster, who's in roosters and doing their job, they're annoying, they're largely, some of them are really cool, but a lot of the ones we had initially were just off the charts, like mean and like really overprotective of their flock for no real reason, and that we knew of at the time anyway. And so then we get to the point of culling the rooster for food, and it's, I kind of follow that sort of Native American process of just respecting that being for its being, and also for its death providing life for us. Right. Regardless of the annoyance and the frustration that it might have caused prior to that moment.
And so maybe, staying on this analogy, maybe the cancer or the food coming from the cancer is your ability to be present now.
Right.
And eventually, I mean, you're just going to slit its throat eventually. Hopefully, I think that's the plan, is just getting rid of it.
Yeah, that's pretty graphic there.
But I mean, eventually it'll be gone, and But I guess having the mind to thank it or live with it, maybe respect it a little bit while it's there.
Right.
And with the help of the horses, by the way, because in a lot of ways, I feel like you wouldn't be the happy person that you are now without the horses.
Yep.
I mean, you've kind of mentioned you've had a bit of a past with depression.
Yep.
You can sometimes get angry a bit too quickly and a bit too much.
Right.
So I feel like with the horses, they help you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is reinforce the horse. Maybe we end it with the horses.
Yeah. Well, right on. Well, this was a really good conversation. If you're listening and you're still listening, thank you so much. And we'd love to hear from you at any time. So be sure to look us up. We're on Facebook at Reinforce the Horse, and
TikTok and YouTube at Reinforce the Horse.
Yeah, and Alyssa's pretty much managing all of that these days, and doing a fantastic job putting some good content out there, excellent content at that. And if you want to shoot us an email to just say hi or have questions or whatever, or maybe some future topics or guests or whatever, you can reach us at podcast@reinforcethehorse.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you even more for reaching out to us, because we would love to know that actual humans, living, breathing humans, are listening. And we'll catch you again on the next session.
Yep.
Have a good day.